Today marks the end of our prosecutions related to the horrific mass shooting at Nudieland last summer. Dominic Burris was sentenced today to 278 months, or just over 23 years, in prison for shooting and killing August Golden and causing traumatic injuries to so many others. His co-defendant, Cyrell Boyd, was previously sentenced for his role in this tragic shooting. My thoughts today are with August's family and loved ones, as well as all of the others who were injured and traumatized that day. While today is the end of our prosecution in these cases, it simply marks a new chapter in what will be a lifetime of missed memories and pain for those who were directly impacted by this mass shooting. In the last year, I've come to understand so much more about the community of people whose lives were forever changed that day. Nudieland was a concert venue for punk music and a safe space for many in the queer community. August Golden exemplified the values held by many, lifting people up, unconditional empathy, and mutual aid. Community members were welcomed with kindness. Dominic Burris, 17 at the time, was one of those people who simply showed up off the street and was welcomed. Dominic Burris caused immeasurable harm that night, and for that, he is being held accountable in a manner that is necessary to protect public safety. He was certified as an adult, and he is going to prison for a long time. His involvement in prior incidents of violence and his role in this mass shooting left us no meaningful alternative to ensure public safety. At the same time, we cannot ignore his own traumatic history. We must acknowledge that the systems we have in place to care for children in our community who are experiencing trauma and harm failed to effectively intervene in his life. I often think about the fact that we would not be here if they had. The tragic irony is that the people who were victimized by this mass shooting were deeply connected to mutual aid and care for others, committed to supporting those whose lives had been shaped by their own trauma. The safe space that was shattered by this tragic shooting could have also been a safe space for others, including Dominic Burris and Cyrell Boyd. We must also continue to acknowledge the proliferation of guns in our community and the catastrophic harm that results. Gun violence is the leading cause of death for young people in this country today. In 2024, the U.S. Surgeon General declared gun violence a public health crisis, and the ease with which people can get and use them makes us all less safe. We have expanded our youth group violence intervention work and are committed to working collaboratively with our community and system partners to address this critical issue. We have lost far too many loved ones to guns. We are joined today by some of the people who were injured that night. First up is Caitlin, who is August Golden's partner.
Hi, my name is Caitlin. August was my partner and a part of my community, as with everyone who's standing behind me and many who are present with us. We're all very severely traumatized from the events that took place on that night. I just want the press who is present to be aware of that. I'm going to read a piece of my impact statement that I just read in court, or that I read to the court. I believe this world and the systems we live under are the reason we are standing in this courtroom today. I believe this country breeds scarcity and scarcity breeds violence. I believe hurt people hurt people. In turn, I do not believe prison can do much good for the longevity of a human mind and body. I do not believe punitive justice or the deterioration of another will bring me any closure. I firmly believe in the concept of multiple truths, and with that, I am in a complicated position. I witnessed the loss of August, I feel immense rage and sorrow towards the gun that shot the bullet, the person who pulled the trigger, the manufacturer and capital that went into said gun, and the system that failed said person. Additionally, I would like to add that I think that what happened at Nudieland and the guns that were used, has everything to do with the greater violence that is taking place in the world today. Everyone who has experienced any sort of trauma from guns, from any weapon, is all tied together. That is all.
Antonio, who is seriously injured in the shooting.
Hello, my name's Tonio. I will also be saying a little bit of my statement that I find important. August 11th, I was sitting in a circle of friends on the same lawn I had frequented for other shows like that night. When the night had settled and while looking at my friend talk, I found the next seconds knelt on my side, bleeding profusely from a bullet that had fractured my rib, cut my kidney off, and had spread through my abdomen. As shock came in, I worried about my friends. I've worried about if my friends had been shot just like me and why I couldn't get up to perform aid like I had trained so long for my life. Though I worked through my trauma and therapy, I still feel that underlying guilt that I had survived the actions of Dominic Burris and August had not. The actions of Dominic Burris and others are not limited either to me, to August's families, to the others injured as on paper. People there experienced one of the scariest moments of their lives, like my friend who had watched as the color left my skin and I wasn't able to answer questions past my name. Our families were impacted too, because no mother should see her firstborn opened up on a bed in the middle of the night. And people that found safety and comfort in the local community should not attend memorials and medical fundraising events because of senseless violence. Dominic needs to understand that his actions haunt the lives of me, the families, the victims, the attendees, and everyone who attends local music in Minneapolis. And for true justice, he must dedicate his entire life to mending that terror he inflicted. As a father now, he has the opportunity to make right and to be the support he needed so desperately for his own family. I, as a victim, do not think anyone is evil, even with the harm they cause, if they stay on the right path of the future. And I hope that past his incarceration, I can see his progress and maintain my forgiveness. Thank you.
Jenny, who is also injured in the shooting.
On June 18th, 2023, my mother passed away from breast cancer that had spread to her liver. I held her as she died. 54 days later, I watched August fall to the ground after being shot 6 feet in front of me. His shriek still rings in my ears. I was shot a split second later. I screamed his name after I ran from the backyard and into the street. Haphazardly, I yelled his name even through a dose of fentanyl in the ambulance. In the ER, I begged doctors to let me sit up while I was examined so I could search in neighboring beds. I received a phone call that he had passed, and I let out one last incredulous scream. The most pain I've ever experienced in my life was the morning after I had been shot. I have a through and through gunshot wound on my upper right thigh. I was told by the nurse to flush my wound with warm water in the shower, through the entrance and out the exit. The pain was so unbearable, it is difficult to describe. I imagine a prolonged version of this feels like dying. I wailed, wept, lost my balance, and almost vomited. I keep asking myself a question, as if it is my responsibility to answer. What do we do with children who commit egregious crimes? Children who have been failed by their caretakers, the system, and society. Failed at such a young age that they would choose to shoot into a crowd of strangers and walk away from blood and screams. I don't have an answer, and I'm okay with that. Lastly, I'd like to share my wishes for Dominic. I don't want anyone else ever to suffer because of his actions. I don't know if he could even begin to grasp the fallouts of his violence, but I'd like to see him try. Most importantly, I'd like to see him apologize to August's family and loved ones and all those impacted by the shooting. I'd like to see him deliver that apology when it is sincere and thorough. I'd like to see him go to drug and alcohol counseling. If he has any remorse, I hope that he would seek out these opportunities on his own. I'd like to see him create a life for himself that would honor August. Thank you.
Bobby?
I wasn't shot by a bullet. Rather than, I was sitting outside of the house with my journal waiting to show my best friend a journal entry I was happy to write about. It was about how much I enjoyed the punk community, how it brought me a sense of peace and feeling understood by other people, something that I wasn't able to find anywhere else. And then they approached us, and it all escalated from there. And as someone that looks like me, it was hard being young and being put in that situation to really grasp that me rejecting somebody else's advances and me trying to be there for my friends as they are being harassed by two other people. I thought that if I put the blame on myself, it would all make sense. I could understand the reason as to why any of this happened. It has now been over a year and so many months. And it's easier to swallow the pill and understand that all of this has happened because the system has failed those two as individuals. And it will continue to do so for the rest of our lives as we continue down this path that we're going on. And it's hard to accept that. But if you look at the world outside of us, it's already happening. Still, there is a part of me that believes so much in hope. And that even in this situation, I still fully believe and love. And I see it when people speak of August Golden. That, I think, has helped me the most with all of this. Seeing how other people can mourn, to grieve, and to love somebody else, to feel that anger for these two individuals, and for those two individuals to also speak up about their own past traumas as well. It's all come into a collective that nobody is okay in this situation. And neither was I. But I still believe that there is a better way to go about all of this. Don't antagonize. Don't put a blame on a certain group of people. It doesn't matter. It's already been explained before. But gun violence is running rampant in this country, and I don't know if anyone is willing to stop it.
Questions?
For any victims who feel that they can answer this, we heard a bit of an apology today in court. Do you, any of you have thoughts on that? And do you believe it was sincere?
You can respond.
I was not expecting to hear Dominic's voice today in that way. I think apologies are, personally speaking, accepted when there is action shown. And it takes a long time for someone to be able to make the change happen. I am not here to, or I'm here, I acknowledge it, and I guess appreciate the remorse shown, but it, for now, personally speaking, feels symbolic, and it will take a long time for that. The compassion and empathy that I have for the system that we all live under and what Dominic has experienced isn't forgiveness or acceptance from me. It'll just take a long time. But I do appreciate it, but that maybe isn't the right word.
I didn't expect to hear his voice at all. I've only seen him a couple times in court. I've always maintained my stance on that I don't think he's an evil person. I don't think he came out that way. I just think he's a product of circumstances. And his apology, whether he means it or not, means the same to me because I still believe that he can be better. And for the sake of my own healing, I find in therapy that it's better to forgive, not just for him, but for myself as well.
Over the last year and a half, kind of wavered back and forth whether or not I thought that this kid is pathological. I heard in a hearing, I don't even remember when, a social worker listing his childhood experiences, and it made sense to me that someone who had experienced such terrible trauma from a very young age would do something like this, because well-adjusted people do not shoot into crowds of strangers. People who have experienced grief, loss, abandonment, they do. I don't believe any longer that Dominic is pathological. And hearing him say August's name multiple times was surprising. And I loved that it was specific. And maybe I'm just naive, but I do believe that he will largely follow through on the things that he said he was going to do.
Other questions? Jeff?
These very empathetic people
have their opinion on this. How do you view this when it comes to sentencing someone who's 17 at the time of a crime? I know this is something you care deeply about when it comes to juvenile justice and how we approach these types of things. Even the difference between, say, Avery or Bruce Boyle versus this. Can you just speak a little bit to how your office approaches this?
When both of them were charged, I was asked a question about what we were going to do, and I said what we say in every case, which was we were going to look at their backgrounds, we were going to look at what resources were available, and make the best decision we could at the time for public safety. There's no happiness for me whatsoever after the sentencing. And I continue, after 2 years in this job, one of the hardest things is for me to sit with victims and families and, look at them and say, really, there's nothing that we can do in the system that's going to bring your loved one back. And I continue to believe if we were really sincere about caring about victims and loved ones, we would put the resources where they need to be with young people to make sure nothing like this ever happened. It's, I had an opportunity to hear briefly some of Mr. Burris's comments. and also his lawyer's comments, and his lawyer documented much of what we saw in the psychological and the certification study. And as I said earlier, it's really hard for me to stand here and not think about the fact that we wouldn't be here if he had had effective resources, loving people, loving, kind people like we're surrounded with here. And so it's tragic all around. I can only hope that Mr. Burris, prison is usually very traumatic for young people, especially juveniles. But we really didn't have any other resources available to us, and I'm hopeful, especially as the father of a new baby, that he can focus on the fact that he does have hope and that he will be getting out with an opportunity to live his life in a way that honors the life of August Golden and the damage that he caused to everybody else. Other questions? Thank you. Oh, you have another. Sure.
If anybody wants to speak to this, can you explain what's happened to Nudie Land? What's happened to that community? I know there's obviously a discussion about the individual traumas that you all have gone. But where does that community stand now, and what has this done to that community in general?
Well, that community is standing in this room with you right now. That happened at a punk show. I've been going to punk shows since I was 14 with my mom. And as I said in my statement in the courtroom, and as you can see here today with the presence of the people around you, it's still there. Nudie Land is in the hands of someone else now. But the house is symbolic of something bigger than that. We are still here doing what we do. I went to a show the week after it happened, to the hour, there's nothing there's a big changes, and we all have a lot of trauma, which we already all did. And we don't have August, and it would, I guess, be naive to say that there hasn't been strife within the community, as any communities who are experiencing a lot of stress have. But we are just doing exactly what we were doing before, with maybe a slightly different perspective on the world. But